Welcome back, I'm Rob Lang and this is my game Clomper. You live inside a mechanical ladybird called a Clomper, which you can control by laying pipes to power machines with steam. The outside world is a hellscape that you explore from inside the Clomper, picking up resources and completing quests. If that sounds like fun, like and subscribe for more. The last time we spoke, I had just got the periscope working. That's 11 of the 18 I had planned. Infrastructure, player spawning, world gen, pipes, boilers, steam, map, con and legs. Let's see how far I've got now. Before we get started, it's worth noting that the issues I found were correct at time of recording. Mirror and NGO don't stand still, so check the date on the video, and if you're way off in the future, the feature and code of each will have changed. Also, if you're in the future, hello from the past. And do we have flying cars yet? Anyway, back to Clomper. Next on the list was the grabber. The grabber is used for bringing things from the outside world inside. That might be scrap, resources, quest items or other cool things to help you on your way. It comes in two parts. You have the station that the player interacts with, forward, back, left and right, and then there's the actual claw on the outside of the Clomper. The handle uses an animator, so that needed network animator. The claw itself is moved by changing the position on the game's object transform, so network transform there. Mirror sync var became NGO network variables. Server RPCs got renamed. In Clomper, a player only owns their own avatar. Everything else is shared, so it's okay to set the require ownership on the server RPCs to false, because anyone is allowed to move the handles, switches and so on. This is a co-op game, not a competitive one, so I'm not prioritising anti-cheat. If you want to troll your friends and family, then please do. To test that the claw and grabber worked, I needed something in the game world to grab. Right now there are two choices, quest items and scrap resources. Questing is later, so scrap resources it was. As the claw is a scene object, which means it's part of the scene and there from the start for all players, it can have its own network object on it. At the time of recording, NGO doesn't support child network objects on prefabs, but we'll come back to that. That means that I could parent the scrap prefab to the claw using NGO's parenting. That wasn't possible in Mirror. I wrote a lot of code to work around that limitation, see the video in the top right, but now I stripped it all out, which meant rewriting quite a lot. The lift brings the scrap to the player, which uses an animator. Network animator for that again. Easy stuff. Next, the players needed to move the scrap around inside the Clomper. Moving objects around inside such a tight space needs rigid bodies, so things can bounce off each other and not be pushed through the walls like you can get with parenting kinematic objects. To do this, I create a spring between the object and the player's hand on the server, then synchronise the transform. You get this wobbly movement, which is worse with lag. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for now. In the future, I'm going to experiment with giving the player ownership of the object and making the spring on their client too, but this is fine for now. The grinder was next, which has similar needs as the claw, as did damage and repair. Mostly network animators. With that complete, I could finish off the fire sprites, whose position was already synchronised but need to get picked up like scrap and popped back into the boiler. I used much the same code as I did for scrap moving. Top tip: test for late joining players. There are two kinds of players in multiplayer. Those that were there when an event happens, like an explosion, and players that join after it has happened. They're called late joiners. Both kinds of player need to be aware of the state of the game. Instead of RPCs, aim to use synchronized variables like NGO's network variable or Mirror's sync var, so that state gets synchronized for late joiners too. With all these tasks done, the only one left was questing. Look how small that little hex is on the end. Just a little thing, shouldn't take long. Of course, I knew this was going to be big. Questing is complex. It has lots of moving parts, and the first moving part was the hardest. The quest tube. A quest tube holds the description of the quest. The player goes over, picks it up, reads the quest, and either accepts it by putting it into the con or discards it. Note how the quest is fixed to the camera as I move around. I wanted to do this by taking the quest and fixing it to the hand of the player. The hand is a game object that's the child of the camera, so that when the camera moves, the hand and quest tube does too. In single player, that's easy. In NGO, you can parent things too, but the parent must have a network object on it. In my case, the hand on the camera must have a network object. NGO does support child network objects. After all, this is how I have the claw set up. But a prefab can only have one network object, and the player, because it's spawned after the server has started, must be a prefab. So I can't make the hand a network object, so I can't parent to it. This was really frustrating. It felt like two separate constraints were stopping something so core to gaming, a player picking up an object. So instead I faked it. There are now two quest tubes, one permanently fixed to the player's hand that holds the text, and one that gets taken from and put back into the con. I show hide the quest tubes so you only see one at a time. That added more complexity than I'd like. I was tempted to dig through the boss room project to see how their pick up and drop worked, but I needed to keep making small steps progress. Perfect is the enemy of done. I can come back to this later. With that complete, there was just a lot of logic to move over. Do I still recommend NGO? Yes. The support I received over pick up and drop was good, even if it wasn't the answer I wanted. The documentation is good, and it's obvious that NGO is core for Unity's gaming services, so it's going to keep improving. Are you tempted to build a multiplayer game? Are you building one now? Let me know how you're getting on in the comments. My next medium-term goal is to get a single-player demo alpha version of the game up on itch, so you can all have a play. Yes, I know what you're thinking, single player. But I'm going to do that for now, as I won't have matchmaking and friend joining systems on itch to begin with. To get to that milestone, I have some things to do first. 1. I need a menu scene. When you start the game, it looks like this. Literally nothing else. NGO doesn't have developer menu like Mirror does. These buttons I've just slapped on the UI. That needs sorting out. 2. Formalise the save load system. I have the ability to save and load pipe layouts to make testing faster, and that will become the backbone of save and load, but I need the feature to do the worlds as well. 3. Discord. I know many of you think it's weird that I don't have a Discord server. Everyone has a Discord server. To support the demo though, I do need one as an easy way to communicate with the players, so one's gonna come. 4. Clomper Twitter account. I'm using my personal one for now, but that needs to stop. And 5. More testing with friends. My favourite guinea pigs. Squeak, squeak. I do have broader marketing plans, but I need the game to be in the hands of you lovely people first. I'm not rushing Clomper out to feed my family or pay the bills. This is my hobby, so I can afford to not burn out doing it. I also want to make a video on moving from Mirror to NGO, and another on motivation, because as you can probably tell watching devlog 57 and 3 years of gradual work, I'm pretty good at maintaining that, and how I approach it may be a little different to what you hear elsewhere. Please do feed the algorithm with like and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.